Z-guard here. So just to preface this, we talked about a few things yesterday. I'm going to cover them quickly for anybody who missed that class. This guy's rarely going to reach with his inside arm because if he does that, it's very simple for me to pass that and get rid of my knee shield, and now I've got some pretty good back exposure if I'm in the play in the truck. I'm already in on the calf slicer and all these fun things here. So the chances of you seeing that, slim to none, especially if you show up to it one time, he's probably never going to do it again. We talked about this entire Kimura series yesterday, which is actually what is going to set us up to hit a lot of these leg attacks. If he leaves this here as low-hanging fruit, we're sitting up taking this Kimura. We talked about a lot of the sweeps. We talked about shrimping away and resetting into the triangle or the omoplata, depending on his resistance and his immediate defenses. So, with all of that in mind here, this time when I go for his wrist, he's going to pull his wrist away from me, whether it's straight back or whether it's up in the air. It doesn't really matter. I just want him to get his wrist away. It's going to reset his base and his balance just a little bit. I'm going to take my top side arm or my inside arm, depending on how you look at it, and I'm going to go through the armpit here. I like to use a stiff arm because I like to use my elbow here to start creating this angle on him, right? If he falls all the way over, that's really, really cool, but I don't expect him to. I expect he's probably going to base on his arms here. There we go. I'm going to bring this knee to my face, and this foot that was on the outside simply swivels to the inside here. So I have some semblance of Ashi Garami. Depending on the amount of rotation he hits, you can see I'm already in on a pretty decent knee bar here, right? But that's going to be kind of a rare occasion. More often than not, they're going to have a little bit of resistance. They're going to try to base up, and there we go. This is more likely what you're going to see here. So my first attack here, depending on rule sets and whatnot, we're just going to pretend everybody's a blue belt for a moment, because we're going to talk about heel hooks and all kinds of cool shit. So I take my hand that's on the same side as the foot, and I go pinky to pinky knuckle, and I start hitting him with this steering wheel finish right here, okay? This is me extending my arm so that it's nice and straight because my ability to press, I'm not the world's strongest man, but I have some pretty decent posture so I can continue to drive this in towards his butthole. If this does not work, it's pretty quick, but I can just come up over the top and look, I've found my Kimura grip just like we were doing before, and here's a nice toe hold, right? I don't care that he has the ability to rotate, because if he does rotate out of it, it's going to be to his demise. That's the way he's going to want to go. And look at this, now we have found ourselves in some good honey hole attacks. My feet are oriented probably a little bit differently than you typically see with the honey hole, but as you guys know, I'm quite unorthodox with things, so it makes it rather difficult for him to pummel under this leg to counter me with the honey stick, and as we talked about before, my inside leg cannot just extend to really prevent him from doing so. I keep all my legs short. So, if we are white belts, or for whatever reason we just like don't have a lot of confidence in our ability to heel hook and toe hold, so we are more comfortable with the straight ankle. Ashi is still the optimal position for the straight ankle, right? So I swivel my foot, I stomp the hip. I still have all of my same straight ankle attacks here. Standard straight ankle, power Achilles, all this fun stuff. Topside heel hooks as well, right? Again, the heel hook doesn't happen with any rotational force, like my obliques are not going to be strong enough to break somebody's knee. However, I can start to posture back into him here, right? Or I can rotate, and now I can stomp off the floor with this bottom foot and explode it towards the ceiling as well. But I'm not going to break it by doing this. In fact, this is just going to trigger him into a roll, and then I'm going to end up chasing him out of bounds or into a brick wall. Questions, concerns, comments about any of that? That's where we're going to start today. Okay, 1, 2, 3. We're going to focus a little bit on some of the details that we talked about yesterday. We're going to transition back to the upper body, playing this Kimura, looking at this triangle, this omoplata, armbar, and then we'll even talk about maybe some of my preferential omoplata finishes, which are more than likely not the omoplata. So I will actually go on my way to show how to finish that today, because yesterday I really didn't talk about it, and people were like, well, I'm not going to get up into this position. It's kind of silly. So let's go. So we're in the Z-guard, and I've got me a nice Kimura here. I caught it hanging, and I'm going to now use this, right? I'm just going to unlatch my legs. I've created an upper body connection, so now I can kind of just forget about my lower body connection at the moment, as I would like to keep mobility in play. And if I tie it myself everywhere here, like, clearly I'm not mobile. I'm very much so anchored to this thing at the moment. So coming out here, I'm snaking my outside leg in front of the shoulder here. That's almost always the hardest part of the triangle fight, is getting your leg in front of your shoulder, especially if he sees it coming. hip if I so choose, and I'm playing here, right? I just have, like, for no other reason than the fact that we're drilling this, I could probably force a triangle on him from here. But from here, I'd like for him to make some sort of decision, right? That's a pretty relatively good decision. This should trigger you into the omoplata every time. So now my arm furthest away from him, it's going to go to his cheek or his ear, whatever, and I'm going to stiff arm him as I cut my angle here. I figure for my legs over the shoulder, and I just, again, make a nice stiff arm to try to prevent this roll. If he does roll, it's not the end of the world. I'll show you what I do if he rolls. Go ahead and roll, Joey. He rolls, I follow the arm, and we play the baby arm bar. This looks like a baby arm, like my penis. I think Phil Schwartz calls this the joystick, okay? And if you're not having a lot of luck with this, you're a small rotation away from just playing standard arm bar stuff anyways, right? So, him rolling out of the omoplata should not be the end of the world. So that's one thing that you can drill. Back in here. Beating on his shoulder battle. One more time we go to the omoplata. Stiff arm to create the angle here. You also have the ultra Kimura at this point as well, if you were to have maintained that Kimura grip from the get-go, right? So now that I've cleared his head here, this is very Gio Martinez-esque. This hook prevents the roll. This one creates more leverage, and I can just crank this baby all day long. Even if he decides to roll, we'll just finish this thing belly down, but he'd have to explode pretty hard to get me there. So from here, say we play standard omoplata because he shoves this up in his hip pocket, and I just decide, like, hey, it's not worth the fight. Efficiency is key. So I come up and I create this nice angle. I finish my omoplata by switching my feet. So right now, they're very close to his head. I bring them as far to the outside as I can, and the way that I get up is by leaning on him. Right, boom. Another thing that I like to do, that I think I have a little bit more success with than that, is instead of finishing the actual Kimura, or omoplata, same thing, I just go 2 hands up under the neck here and I start to crank on this choke right here. Boom. Depending on how flexible you are, you can always run like a full rear naked choke on this guy too. Something that's pretty funny to do that I enjoy quite a bit is I dig this far side underhook, and I bring this to me, and then you play this good old like double chicken wing game. Just the more you stretch this to the ground, the more he's going to have to tap. It's pretty cool, pretty funny. So those are 4 options from the omoplata. All right. Questions, concerns, comments?
So from Z, when you are coming up from triangle, right?
Yep.
Now, typically, I mean, I would assume like he's going to base with that right hand, right?
Yep.
So okay, so you're just shrinking out farther.
Yep.
Okay. That was my question.
Alright, and then so let's say this time he's not so smart here, maybe I've hit him with the omoplata already, so he doesn't want to put his hand back there. So this time we're looking more at a triangle route, right? So triangle, very simply, I cross the body here, and then I'm looking to cut my angle to a 90-degree on the opposite side that I have my feet locked. One big issue that people have is they're like, man, there's a lot of meat. How do I close all this in there? You don't close all of it in there. You want his shoulder on the other side of this hole, right? See how much easier it is to close that now? And he's probably already feeling the choke. I take this arm and I dig an underhook, and I pass it off, and then I dig this underhook. And now I have a complete 90-degree angle with him. If he rolls because he feels like he can roll and that'll relieve some pressure, like you just kind of let the sweep happen, boom. People end up having a lot of problems finishing this mounted triangle. I'll show you again another secret that I like, and it has to do with a similar foot movement that the omoplata has. I start to lean on him, and I get my feet out here, and I create this tension right here, right? And so it kind of compresses his chest. Very fun for Joey today. And then lastly is a very similar scenario. He doesn't like what I'm doing when I hit the omoplata, so he lets his arm come up front because he's now confident that he can posture up and away from me. When he does so, I cut my angle, and my right thigh, the one that's going to make all the movement, it stays connected to him the whole time. If I do something silly like this, he's going to have a lot of opportunity to create space and get his way out. So instead, I'm imagining that I'm scraping the inside of my thigh across his shoulder and across his face. And that gives him a lot less opportunity to have space to pull his arm out or to stack into me, what have you. And his arm is going to break. Right? Questions, concerns, comments? Oh, 1, 2, 3.